Hello, you're on the Reddit Reveals channel. There were two heartbeats on the screen, but only one of them should have been mine. She held the ultrasound up like it was a trophy, smiling in that nervous way people do when they're trying to convince you nothing's wrong. She said, "Surprise." And for a moment, a terrifying, paralyzing moment, I forgot how to breathe. Not because she was pregnant, because the due date didn't line up, because the math didn't lie, because I'd been sleeping in the guest room for months. I stared at the grainy photo in her hands, at those blurry little loops of life pulsing inside her, and all I could think was, who did this to you? She said it happened on the trip. That trip, the one I wasn't supposed to ask about, the one where her phone accidentally died, the one where she came back with new jewelry, a new perfume, and a sudden, overwhelming love for mango smoothies, which she used to hate. She said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that she was drunk, that it didn't mean anything. And then, I swear to God, she laughed. Like it was some tragic comedy we were co-starring in. Like I was supposed to clap and say, "Wow, what a plot twist." But I didn't laugh. I didn't cry either. I just asked whose. She hesitated. That's all I needed. 1/2 second of hesitation, and my stomach turned inside out. I walked outside, left the photo on the counter. My hands were shaking. My knees felt like they didn't belong to me. The air outside didn't help. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message, just a video. I watched it once, then twice. Then I dropped my phone like it had burned me. In the video, she wasn't with Bree. She wasn't doing yoga. She wasn't at a retreat. She was at a rental house, in a hot tub, with him. And I recognized him. Not because he was famous, but because I'd shaken his hand at our wedding. Because he gave a toast that made everyone laugh. Because he was supposed to be our friend. Bree's husband. The man I helped move furniture last fall. The man I gave my spare power drill to. The man who told me he was one of the good guys. And she was sitting on his lap like they were in some sick honeymoon suite. That's when the shaking stopped. That's when the cold sank in. Because now I knew whose baby it was. And she had no idea that I knew. Not yet. But she was about to. I didn't confront her that night. I wish I could say I had the guts, that I stormed in, slammed the phone on the table, pointed at the screen and shouted, "Explain this." But I didn't. I just stood outside until the cold started to hurt. Until the stars blurred into each other. Until my phone died in my hand, like it was too ashamed to keep showing me what it had shown. When I finally came back in, she was asleep on the couch with a blanket barely covering her legs, and the ultrasound still sitting on the kitchen counter like some kind of bait. And that's exactly what it was, a trap wrapped in hope. And I nearly walked right into it. She looked so peaceful, so normal. It made my stomach churn. I wondered how many lies were hiding under that blanket with her. How many stories she had rehearsed on the drive back from wherever that cabin was. I just stood there, watching her chest rise and fall, and I hated myself for still loving her even then. The next morning, she made pancakes. Blueberry, my favorite. Said she wanted us to start fresh. I nodded like a coward. She poured me coffee, sat across from me, and started talking about baby names as if we were actually going to raise it together. As if nothing had happened. I tried to swallow the food, but it tasted like concrete in my throat. I kept hearing her laugh from the video. That laugh. I can't describe it. It wasn't joyful. It was private. It wasn't meant for me. I told her I was going to work early. She kissed my cheek and said, "You're going to be a great dad." I barely made it to the car before I started shaking again. I couldn't go to work. Couldn't go anywhere. I just drove. Around the city. For hours. Thinking. Replaying the video in my head like some sick loop. Her hands on his shoulders. His voice. I remembered his voice now. It was in the background, saying something like, "You think he suspects anything?" She had laughed and said, "He's too soft." That broke something inside me. I wasn't mad that she cheated. I mean, of course I was. But what really gutted me was the way she said it. Like I was some predictable, spineless joke of a man. Like I wouldn't do anything even if I knew. Maybe she was right. That afternoon, I did something I never thought I'd do. I messaged Bree. Just one line. "Is your husband home right now?" She replied 2 minutes later. "No." Why? And that was all I needed. Because Bree didn't know. She had no idea. I stared at her message, heart pounding, knowing I was holding a bomb in my hands. I thought about telling her right then, just sending the video, blowing it all up. But something stopped me. Maybe fear. Maybe pity. Maybe I didn't want to be the guy who destroyed 2 marriages in one day. Instead, I asked her one more thing. Did Mallory and Nate really go on that trip together? She replied with a voice note this time. Her voice cracked halfway through. Wait, what are you saying? And that's when it hit me. She'd been lied to, too. My wife didn't just betray me. She betrayed her best friend. The one who gave a toast at our wedding. The one who helped her through her mom's funeral. The one who once stayed up all night to help decorate our first apartment. And that's when the ideas started to form. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't even going to leave. Not yet. Because if they wanted to play games behind my back, I was about to build them a stage. And they wouldn't even see the curtains rise. The first time I watched the video, I focused on her hands, her voice, her smile that wasn't mine. The second time, I studied him. Nate, the man who showed up at my house last Thanksgiving with wine and a pie he didn't even bake. Who called me bro and offered to help fix our broken porch light like he gave a damn. But it was the third time, the time I forced myself to slow it down frame by frame, that I noticed something else. A mirror. Behind them. Fogged, but not enough to hide their reflection. And in the corner of that reflection, a phone. Propped up. Recording. This wasn't some random moment caught by accident. This was filmed on purpose. Which meant someone wanted me to see it. That changed everything. Was it him? Was it her? Was this a warning? A power play? A threat? Or was it someone else entirely? My hands were shaking again, but not from heartbreak this time. Something colder. Heavier. A sensation I hadn't felt in years, not since high school, when I was the quiet kid everyone assumed wouldn't fight back. That sick rush of humiliation and rage, melting together behind clenched teeth. I didn't sleep that night, just lay awake beside her, listening to her breathe. At one point, she rolled toward me and rested her hand on my chest, like she knew. Like she was trying to press the guilt back into my skin and pretend it never existed. I didn't move. I let her hand stay there, like a trophy nailed to my ribs. By morning, I had a plan. I started small, gathered receipts, scrubbed her phone back up from the old laptop she forgot I still had in the garage, found GPS history, old texts, photos buried deep in folders labeled taxes. There were no taxes, just selfies, some with her face, some without. She was smiling in most of them. Then I contacted Bree again, told her I had something to show her, but not over the phone. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop halfway between our neighborhoods. She thought it was about Mallory. She was right, but not in the way she expected. She showed up wearing sunglasses even though it was overcast. Brought her toddler with her, strapped in a stroller, chewing on a stuffed giraffe. I almost backed out. Almost told her it was a mistake, to forget I said anything. But I didn't. I showed her the video. Her face didn't change at first, just froze, like it was buffering in real life. Then her jaw clenched. And then, only after the clip ended, she whispered, "When was this?" I told her the date. Her hand went to her mouth. She said, "I thought he was with his brother that weekend. He even sent a photo." Then she opened her own phone, found the picture, and showed it to me. Nate standing in front of a fireplace, holding a beer. Only it was the same fireplace from the video. Same crooked frame on the wall. Same log missing from the stack beside it. He'd sent her a photo from the same damn place. Just cropped. Bree didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just said, "Let me know what you want to do." And that's when I realized I wasn't alone in this anymore. She had the other half of the puzzle. And I had the matches. Neither of us wanted to burn it all down. But neither of us was going to look away anymore, either. Because sometimes you don't have to chase revenge. Sometimes you just have to open the door and let the guilty walk right into it. Bree didn't text me for 2 days after we met. I figured she needed time. Maybe she was unraveling the same rope I'd been strangled by for weeks. Maybe she was packing a bag, calling a lawyer, tossing his things out into the yard. But on the third day, she sent me a message that simply read, "He's still lying." I asked what she meant. She sent back a screenshot of her conversation with Nate. He'd just gotten back from a business retreat. Apparently, he was exhausted from meetings. She asked for a photo of the resort. He sent one, a beach chair, a drink, a hotel logo in the corner. She reverse image searched it. It was from a travel agency's blog, posted 3 years ago. So now she knew. Fully. No more shadows. No more hoping she was wrong. And she wasn't even mad about the cheating anymore. She was mad about the stupidity of it all. The laziness. The casualness. Like her marriage was a group project he barely showed up for. Meanwhile, Mallory had gotten happier. That's the part that really messed with my head. She had this glow, this bounce in her voice again. She talked about baby colors and gender reveals. She made a Pinterest board. She texted her mom names and giggled when she got emoji replies. She'd lay my hand on her stomach like it was some sacred moment, and I'd just sit there pretending I wasn't screaming in my head. I wasn't sure how long I could keep playing dumb. Then Bree proposed something I hadn't considered. She wanted to invite them both to dinner. Nate and Mallory. At her house. She said she wanted to act normal. Just to observe. Just to see if either of them would flinch. I told her it was a bad idea. She said, then let it be a bad idea together. So I agreed. We picked a date. A Thursday night. Bree made lasagna. I brought wine. We set the table like it was Thanksgiving and Death was our guest of honor. I was shaking before they even arrived. Bree wasn't. She was calm, collected, beautifully cold. She wore red lipstick and a smile so sharp I swear it cut through the air. When Nate and Mallory walked in, it was like watching two actors enter a scene they didn't realize we'd already read the script for. Nate was smug, overcompensating, joking too loud, touching Bree's back too often. Mallory was quieter. She looked around like the walls were watching. We ate. We chatted. We let them perform. Halfway through dessert, Bree brought out the ultrasound photo Mallory had sent her weeks ago. The one with the handwritten, "Can't wait for you to be an aunt," scribbled across the top in pink ink. She placed it on the table like a centerpiece. Mallory blinked. "Oh, you still have that?" "Of course," Bree said, all sugar and venom. "It means so much. You know, considering." Nate looked confused. Considering what? There was silence. Heavy. Almost theatrical. Then Bree tilted her head and said, "Well, considering how far along she is and how the dates don't line up." Mallory's face paled. I mean, drained. Nate shot her a look. Just a flicker. But enough. And that's when I realized something terrifying. They hadn't told each other everything. They hadn't coordinated their lies. Nate didn't know the due date. Mallory didn't know what he'd told Bree. They weren't partners in betrayal. They were two selfish people clumsily tripping through their own versions of the same lie, and they were about to collide. Hard. Bree looked at me. I looked at her. And for a second, the entire room held its breath. Then she smiled, leaned forward, and said, "Funny how math doesn't care about secrets." Mallory dropped her fork. Nate's jaw tightened. And I just poured myself another glass of wine. Because now the unraveling had truly begun. No one spoke for a full 10 seconds after Bree dropped the bomb. 10 seconds sounds short. But in a dining room filled with betrayal, it feels like a century. Nate stared at the ultrasound photo like he'd never seen it before. Mallory's fork sat in her untouched slice of tiramisu, slowly sinking into the cream. Her eyes darted to me, then back to Bree. She opened her mouth to speak, but Bree was already standing. "You want coffee, Elliot?" She asked casually, like she hadn't just detonated a mine under the dinner table. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice yet. In the kitchen, I heard mugs clinking. Mallory shifted in her seat, rubbing her palms together like she was trying to scrub the tension off her skin. Finally, she said it. "It's not what you think." The second she said that, I knew she was guilty. Not just because of the words, but because she chose that line. The line people only use when the truth is worse than your worst suspicion. That line is a confession wearing makeup. I tilted my head. "Okay, then what is it?" She looked at me, pleading with her eyes, but not saying a word. Nate, on the other hand, stood up like someone had pulled a string in his back. "I think we should go," he said, voice hard. Bree came back in, calm as ever, holding 2 steaming mugs. "No, I think you should stay." He blinked at her, surprised. "This is insane. We don't owe you guys anything." "Oh," she said with a smile. "You owe me everything." Mallory put her hand on his arm. "Nate." That one word, just his name, and his whole demeanor shifted. Softer now. Scared. That's when I realized he wasn't running the show anymore. She was. The same woman who had just stared at a due date she couldn't explain was now the one trying to manage the damage. Nate was unraveling. Mallory was adapting. Bree sat across from them, folding her hands like a judge in a courtroom. "So which one of you wants to tell the truth first?" "I don't know what you think you're doing," Nate said, puffing his chest, trying to regain control. "This is harassment." "No," I said, finally speaking. "This is closure." And then I pulled out my phone. I hadn't meant to do it. I wasn't planning on showing the video. Not here, not like this. But the moment felt surgical, like we'd carved them down to the bone, and now it was time to look inside. I pressed play and slid it across the table. The silence that followed was different this time. Not suspenseful, suffocating. Mallory didn't look at the screen. She stared at me instead, tears forming in her eyes, but never falling. Nate blinked rapidly, like maybe if he blinked enough, the video would disappear. His face turned blotchy red. I saw his jaw clench, his fingers curl into fists. He muttered, "Who sent you that?" I smiled without humor. "Does it matter?" Mallory finally spoke. Her voice was small. "You weren't supposed to see that." "And yet," Bree said, "here we are." Nate pushed away from the table, so fast his chair scraped loud against the floor. "You guys are pathetic. Spying, snooping, playing detective." Mallory didn't move. She just whispered, "I told you to delete it." They stared at each other, and in that moment, Bree and I became background noise. This was a conversation we were never supposed to hear. "You said no one would find out," he hissed. "I said he wouldn't find out," she shot back. "You said it wouldn't change anything. It was just supposed to be one weekend." My stomach twisted. One weekend. Like that made it cleaner. Simpler. Like a child conceived in a borrowed cabin was any less real. Nate turned to Bree. "This was your plan? Ambush us. Make us feel small." She didn't flinch. "I didn't have to make you feel anything. You did that all by yourself." He looked at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. Then he walked out. Just like that. Mallory didn't follow. She stayed frozen, lips parted, as if she wanted to explain but couldn't find a version of the truth that wouldn't sound monstrous. Her hands trembled. For a moment, I saw the woman I married, or maybe the ghost of her. She turned to me and said, "I never wanted it to go this far." I stood, and I said the first honest thing I'd said to her in weeks. "You went further than you think." Then I walked out the door Nate had left open, into the cold air, into the quiet, and into a world that had already started rebuilding itself without her. 3 days. That's how long it took before she finally showed up at my door. I had moved back into my brother's basement, which sounds pathetic, and honestly, it was. The place smelled like gym socks and regret, but it was quiet, and more importantly, she didn't know the code to the garage. My brother gave me space, said nothing when I came in with a duffel bag and a bottle of something I shouldn't have been drinking, and just nodded like he'd been waiting for this to happen the whole time. The silence was heavy. It followed me like a second shadow. And then she knocked. I didn't answer right away. I watched from the basement window, just barely catching a glimpse of her standing outside in that stupid beige coat she always wore when she wanted to look put together. Like her outer shell could somehow disguise the rotting inside. She knocked again. I opened the door. She didn't say hi, didn't cry, didn't beg. She just looked at me and said, "Can we talk?" I stared at her. No part of me wanted her in that house. No part of me wanted to hear whatever rehearsed lines she'd practiced in the car mirror. But I stepped aside anyway. Because I'm that guy, the one who still offers a glass of water to someone who set his life on fire. She sat down on the worn-out couch and placed her hands in her lap. Like a child. Like someone waiting for punishment. "I know you hate me," she began. I didn't answer. I know what I did was unforgivable. Still nothing. She looked at me then. Really looked. "But I need you to know something." I crossed my arms. "Let me guess. It didn't mean anything. You were confused. You were lonely. You were drunk." Her lips pressed into a line. "It wasn't like that." I raised an eyebrow. "Was it love then?" She flinched. "Good." "No," she whispered. "It wasn't love. I don't even like him like that. It was impulsive. It was supposed to be harmless. I didn't think." I cut her off. "Yeah, that's the one thing I believe. You didn't think." She looked down. "I was angry at you. For pulling away. For not being present. You were always tired. Distant." I laughed. Actually laughed. "So you cheated on me because I was tired?" "That's not what I said." "No, it's what you meant." She sat up straighter. "I'm trying to explain. And I'm done listening." I snapped. Silence again. Except this time, it felt final. Like we'd reached the end of a play and no one clapped. But she wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Her hands were trembling. "I got the paternity results," she said, placing it on the coffee table like a cursed object. I stared at it. Didn't touch it. "It's not yours," she said, voice flat. I nodded. I already knew that. She waited, maybe for me to scream, to cry, to curse her out. But I'd done all that already. silently, in every sleepless night, in every numb morning. Instead, I leaned back and asked the one question she hadn't prepared for. Did you ever plan to tell me? Or was I just going to raise his kid and smile in Christmas photos while you two kept sneaking around behind PTA meetings? Her eyes welled up then. Finally. But it was too late for tears. I don't know, she admitted. I thought maybe it would fade. That we could move on. Move on. That's what she thought this was. Something to move on from. Like it was a spilled drink. An accidentally sent text. Not the total demolition of everything we built. I stood up. She stood too. I'm keeping the baby, she said quietly. I nodded. Good. I hope it looks just like him. So every day, you're reminded. That's when she finally broke. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she sobbed. And I said, without hesitation, but you let it. I walked past her, opened the front door, and didn't look back as she left. When it closed behind her, I sank to the floor. I didn't cry. I just sat there, still, hollow, and strangely free, because now there was nothing left to guess, nothing left to hold on to, and no one left pretending. All that remained was the truth. It had been 16 days since I last saw Mallory. 16 days of silence, solitude, and the bitter taste of a future I hadn't wanted but was slowly learning to accept. People say time heals, but that's not true. Time doesn't heal. Time just makes the silence heavier, and the weight of what happened settle deeper into your bones. I thought the storm had passed. I thought I'd hit the worst of it when I watched that video, when I read the paternity test, when I saw her eyes and realized there was no version of her I could ever trust again. But then her mother called me. She never calls, not even on holidays. Mallory and her mom were close in that tense, complicated way that made every phone call sound like a therapy session wrapped in a landmine. So when I saw her name on the screen, my first thought was that something terrible had happened. My second thought was, is it bad that I hoped it did? Her voice was shaking when I picked up. Elliot, she began, and then silence. Just breathing. Staggered, shaky breathing. What happened? I asked, gripping the phone tighter than I needed to. She told me. She finally told me everything. And just like that, I knew the storm wasn't over. It was only just beginning. She's a mess, her mother continued, voice cracking. She's not eating, she's barely sleeping, and she keeps saying she ruined the only real thing in her life. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? That I forgave her? I didn't. That I still loved her? I wasn't sure. That I wanted her to suffer? Not exactly. I wanted her to understand. She won't stop asking about you, her mother said, sniffling. She keeps replaying it in her head, asking if it could have gone differently. It could have, I said, if she hadn't done it. There was a pause. And then, unexpectedly, her mother said something that made my blood run cold. She told me it wasn't just Nate. I stood up. The floor felt like it dropped a few inches beneath me. What? She said there were moments. Over the years. Times she was lonely. Times you were distant. She didn't say names. Just hinted. I swallowed hard. So I was plan A, and Nate was just the one who got caught? I don't know, her mom whispered. She said she loved you the whole time. That it wasn't about love. That sentence hit me harder than anything Mallory had ever done. Not because it was shocking, but because it sounded exactly like her. She didn't cheat because she fell out of love. She cheated while loving me. Willingly. Repeatedly. As if love was just something she could hold in one hand while destroying me with the other. I ended the call politely, thanked her for letting me know, then stared at the wall for 20 minutes trying to breathe through the reality. It wasn't just Nate. And suddenly, the puzzle pieces I'd ignored before, the work conferences that popped up last minute, the friend crises that always happened on weekends, the unreadable expressions after she came home late, they all shifted into place. I hadn't lost her during that trip. I'd lost her years ago, slowly, quietly, like a leaking pipe behind a wall, rotting everything before it ever cracked open. But what came next? I didn't see coming. Later that night, I got another text. From Bree. He's gone. Packed up and moved in with his brother. Left a note and disappeared. Attached was a photo. Nate's note. Scrawled handwriting, coffee-stained edges. It read, "Tell Mallory I'm sorry. This isn't what I wanted. I thought she'd pick me. I never wanted the baby. I just wanted to win." Win. That word echoed in my skull like a gunshot. This was a game to them. A twisted, manipulative game between two selfish people who used everyone around them as pawns. And they were both losing now. Except Mallory was still holding something. I could feel it. And I wasn't going to let this story end until she put everything on the table. The next day, I sent her a message. Just one line. There's more you haven't told me. I want the truth. All of it. One last time. She responded in under 5 minutes. Okay, come tomorrow. I'll tell you everything. But after that, please don't ever speak to me again. And strangely, that felt fair. Because sometimes, closure isn't about healing. It's about knowing the shape of the knife before you walk away from the blade. She opened the door before I even knocked. Mallory looked different. Not broken. Not angry. Just empty. Like someone who'd been sitting in her guilt long enough that it had started to harden around her. She was still wearing my old hoodie, the one she used to steal in winters because it smelled like home. That detail hurt more than I expected. I made tea, she said. We didn't sit at the dining table. We sat on the floor of the living room, where the rug was still stained from the time we spilled wine during a thunderstorm and decided to just lie there and laugh. I remember that night vividly. Back when we used to fix things with inside jokes and forehead kisses. Before lies hollowed everything out. She spoke first. There were 2 others, she said quietly. Before Nate. Sure things. Stupid. Emotional. I wasn't trying to cheat. I wanted to feel something. I didn't interrupt. I thought you didn't love me anymore, she continued. You were always tired, always distracted. You never looked at me, Elliot. You looked past me. I tried to shake it, to fill the hole with other people's attention. And I thought if I could just reset things, if we had a baby, maybe it would glue us back together. I took a deep breath. You were right. I was distant. I shut down after we lost the first pregnancy. I didn't know how to talk about it, so I buried myself in routine. But I never stopped loving you. Her eyes filled with tears. I know. That's the worst part. She handed me a small envelope. This is the signed release. I'm giving up any claim to our joint savings. The house too. I'm moving in with my sister. I'll be okay. I have support. But I don't want to take anything from you. I opened it. It was real. For the first time, I saw her doing something that wasn't for control, manipulation, or guilt. Just letting go. I'm keeping the baby, she said again, more certain this time. Not because I think it'll fix anything, but because it's still a part of me, and I want to raise it differently. With honesty. I nodded. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me, she whispered. But I needed to say this face to face. I needed to take responsibility. The funny thing is, I expected to feel anger. To lash out. To explode. But all I felt was calm. I forgive you, I said. She looked stunned. You what? I forgive you. I repeated softer this time. Not because you deserve it, but because I need to move on. And I don't want to carry this bitterness into the next chapter of my life. We sat in silence for a while after that. No more confessions. No more fights. Just 2 people quietly acknowledging the funeral of a life they once shared. When I stood to leave, she reached for my hand. Not to pull me back, just to hold it one last time. Thank you for coming, she said. Goodbye, Mallory. That was the last time I saw her. 6 months later, I moved to a new city. Got a better job. One with fewer late nights and more sunshine. I started journaling. Reading again. Even took a trip to Iceland. Something I'd always wanted to do, but never made time for. And one afternoon, while sipping coffee in a quiet bookstore, I met someone. Not planned. Not chased. Just real. Her name's Lena. She's funny in this dry, effortless way. Doesn't try to fill silences. Doesn't flinch when I talk about what happened. She just listens. Really listens. And for the first time in what feels like years, I'm not looking back.